In this final chapter, we move from analysis to action. Up to this point, we have examined the roots of evil, its evolutionary foundations, its psychological mechanisms, and its systemic expressions. Now the question becomes, if malevolence is real and recurrent, what can we actually do about it? This chapter argues that overcoming evil is not simply about reducing aggression. It is about actively interrupting the trajectory of destruction. The authors propose a multidimensional approach focusing on 3 domains. 1, prevention, stopping malevolence early. 2, reconciliation, restoring agency after harm. 3, responsibility, rethinking moral accountability in light of neuroscience. The key claim is this: evil is not inevitable, but preventing it requires intentional psychological and social effort. Let's consider the major claims within the chapter. Claim 1. Prevention must occur early in the process. Evil does not appear suddenly. It develops. It follows what the text calls a continuum of destruction, so intervention must occur before harmful norms become embedded. 3 mechanisms are central here. Active bystandership, people are far more likely to intervene when the victim is humanized and responsibility feels personal. Humanization. Dehumanization shuts down the moral alarm. Humanization reactivates empathy and obligation. The heroic imagination. Moral courage is not spontaneous. It can be trained. It involves preparing individuals to act even when the cost is high and justification feels insufficient. Claim 2. Reconciliation requires restoring agency. After harm, the goal is not just justice, it is psychological repair. The chapter emphasizes narrative integration. People heal by constructing coherent stories out of fragmented trauma. The shift to what now? Instead of asking, why did this happen? The more functional question becomes, what can I do now to reduce suffering? Social pluralism. Systems that promote inclusion reduce the tendency to demonize outgroups. This is critical. Without reconciliation, harm tends to reproduce itself. Claim 3. Neuroscience complicates moral responsibility. Here the chapter introduces a major tension. As neuroscience advances, we increasingly explain behavior in terms of brain processes. This leads to what the text calls neuromania. The consequences are complex. Reduced blame. If behavior is caused by the brain, people judge offenders less harshly. Reduced hope. But they also believe the person is less capable of change. Even more concerning, weakening belief in free will increases cheating, aggression, and conformity. So the question becomes, if we are just biological systems, why be morally responsible? Claim 4. The compatibilist solution. The chapter offers a resolution: compatibilism. Even if the brain operates deterministically, we are still responsible when our actions reflect our internal values, reasons, and choices, without coercion. In other words, you are still the author of your behavior, even if your brain is the mechanism. Now let's attempt to integrate this new information with previously learned information. Step back and connect this to the course as a whole. Earlier, we saw evolutionary predispositions toward aggression, social systems that normalize harm, psychological processes like obedience, conformity, and dehumanization. This chapter brings them together and says, these forces do not just explain evil, they reveal where intervention is possible. If systems shape behavior, we redesign systems. If dehumanization enables harm, we cultivate humanization. If passivity allows evil, we train active bystanders. Here are some questions for students. Try to understand the chapter. What is the continuum of destruction, and where is intervention most effective? Why is humanization such a powerful moral force? What distinguishes a passive bystander from an active one? How does the concept of the heroic imagination relate to earlier discussions of conformity and obedience? In what ways does narrative integration counteract the psychological damage described in trauma and group violence? How does this chapter challenge purely dispositional explanations of evil? Please think deeply about the following questions. Does neuroscience undermine or enhance moral responsibility? What are the dangers of reducing behavior entirely to brain processes? Is compatibilism convincing to you, or does it feel like a compromise? Now consider questions about the application of this knowledge. What would it look like to train heroic imagination in real-world settings, schools, workplaces, communities? Where in everyday life do you see opportunities for active bystandership? What prevents people from acting, even when they know something is wrong? Let's consider moving forward. As we move beyond this chapter, consider if moral agency can be strengthened, how do we build lives and systems that sustain it? If evil depends on silence and passivity, what practices make moral action more automatic? And perhaps most importantly, what does it mean to live in such a way that goodness becomes not heroic, but habitual? The final message of this chapter is both sobering and hopeful. The capacity for harm may be part of our inheritance, but so is the capacity for moral action, and that capacity grows stronger, not through rare heroic moments, but through the repeated choice to act when it would be easier not to. Right now, within your life, what choice to act can you take that would be easier not to do?